Hello, this is Susan introducing this week's Talking News for Saturday, October the 15th. Lisa is now enjoying a well-earned break in sunny Spain. We hope she has a wonderful family time with her children and comes back fully refreshed next week.
This is Chris, reading an article from the Island Echo. Postal deliveries disrupted again as Royal Mail staff go on strike. Royal Mail workers on the Isle of Wight are striking once again in the continuing row over pay, bringing about disruption to postal services. Those who are part of the Communication Workers Union, CWU, have walked out as part of a 24-hour strike, with picket lines established outside sorting offices in Ryde, Sandown and Newport, despite the pouring rain. Further strikes are planned for the 20th of October, the 25th of October and the 28th of November. These surround key dates such as Black Friday and Cyber Monday. There will also be some element of disruption when delivery workers walk out on the 4th, 10th, 16th and 25th of November and the 2nd of December. Those involved in collections and processing will walk out on the 3rd, 9th, 15th and 24th of November as well as the 1st of December. Royal Mail will continue to deliver as many special delivery and tracked 24 parcels as possible, with priority given to COVID test kits and medical prescriptions. Letters are not being delivered on strike days, save for those marked special delivery.
This is Brian reading an article from the Island Echo. Newport's M&S store reopens with new look after refurbishment. Marks & Spencer in Newport unveiled its brand new look for customers last week. The store reopened its doors to local customers on the 3rd of October, with store manager David Hancock cutting the ribbon alongside the company's much-loved mascot Percy Pig. The top-to-bottom transformation has been designed with customers and local families at its heart, helping to make shopping in-store more convenient and inspirational. Customers can now order the full range of M&S clothing and home products and pick them up in store via the brand new digital click and collect service, and can opt for free next day collection when they order online at mns.com by 8 p.m. David Hancock, store manager at M&S Newport, has said, "The whole M&S team have been working really hard to deliver this new look for our store in Newport, and it's been great to hear from customers how much they love all the new features like our fantastic new M&S bakery." If you call in to visit the store, you'll find a new spacious design across our food hall and clothing and home departments, with great features like our new M&S wine shop and digital click and collect service, which are all designed to make shopping with us as enjoyable and convenient as possible.
This is an article from the Island Echo, read by Sue. £23.7 million upgrade of St Mary's Hospital to begin within weeks. A once-in-a-generation capital investment in NHS services on the Isle of Wight, which includes a £23.7 million upgrade of St Mary's Hospital, is about to get underway. Work to improve patient care and outcomes, reduce waiting times and bed occupancy, and transform community mental health provision on the island will start in November. Funding for building plans drawn up as part of the Trust's Investing in Our Future programme has been approved by the Department of Health and Social Care and NHS England. This funding will bring the total capital investment to the island's NHS to £75 million over 4 years. At St Mary's, the Isle of Wight's only remaining hospital, a new emergency care floor will be created, plus wards will be reconfigured and a new high dependency unit will be delivered to improve the flow of patients through the hospital and improve the patient experience. Furthermore, a new £6.7 million mental health and community hub will be built at the former HMV premises in Newport High Street, bringing health and care services together with the community and voluntary sectors, much closer to people's homes. These building projects follow a £10 million investment in additional beds at the Queen Alexandra Hospital, Portsmouth, ensuring that any islanders who need inpatient care on the mainland can access it. Although the hospital is struggling itself with a critical incident declared this week due to a lack of beds. Dr. Nikki Turner, Acting Chief Executive of the Isle of Wight NHS Trust, has said, "This is great news for our NHS and our community. Investment on this scale means that we can make a real difference to the way services are provided now and lay strong foundations for the future of health and care on the Isle of Wight." Health Minister Lord Markham said, "Improving care from patients is one of our top priorities, and this funding will transform NHS services for thousands of local residents on the Isle of Wight. Creating a new mental health and community hub in Newport and modernising St Mary's Hospital means patients can benefit from state-of-the-art new facilities and more convenient care closer to home. This will help us bust the COVID backlogs and speed up treatment and diagnosis times." The island's NHS is also set to welcome further investment after the UK government announcement. One of the 10 new community diagnostic centres will be built on the St Mary's site. The centre will mean greater access to diagnostic tests for islanders, reducing waiting times and improving outcomes.
Swap Shop, East Cowes businesses on the move in boost to town, from the Island Echo, read by Lee. Two well-established and independent East Cowes businesses are hoping to swap shops to keep business booming in the town. In applications to the Isle of Wight Council, Costa Coffee estate agents and Joker Jack's tattoo studio are looking to change the use of the others' respective premises. After talking about a move during a coffee break several months ago, the two business owners quickly realised that each other's properties were actually the other's dream location. Joker Jack's began its Isle of Wight journey after a move from the Midlands and started in a small shop on Lower York Avenue opposite the new site. So for owner Mackie Davis, it's a little like returning home. The new premises at 9 York Avenue not only gives them the space that they need for both client privacy and reception area, but is where they always wanted to be. Mackie says, "For us, it's about returning to where we started. We were interested in renting the shop 5 years ago, but the timing wasn't right for us then. Luckily, when you make friends in a town like this, you get to hear people's plans before they happen. So we jumped at the chance to move, and the shop swap was a great plan for all of us." Costa Castle Property Services, a growing Isle of Wight estate agents, began life in the 9 York Avenue shop in 2019 and has now outgrown the premises, adding administrative staff and Priory mortgage advice to their team. Business owner Laura Priddle began in 16 Ferry Road premises back in 2004, when the property was Watson, Ball and Porter. Laura says, "When I started in estate agency work back in 2004, I was one of the sales negotiators in that office. We always wanted to be based in East Cowes because of its close community, and talking to the guys at Joker Jack's has proved that. It has always been a bit of a dream to return to where it all began, and it's a perfect location for us. I can't believe that we were lucky enough to be able to just swap premises like this. The properties are currently in planning stages to convert the shop usage in line with current legislation, but the new shops will soon change colour and begin the process of opening in late November."
This is Chris, reading an article from the Island Echo. 21 candidates vying for top council job, with a salary of £138,000 a year. Following a national recruitment campaign, 21 candidates have stepped forward to become the Isle of Wight Council's Chief Executive and top paid officer. During the last search for a Chief Executive, only 2 candidates reached the interview stage, and concerns were expressed about the level of interest that would be received for the position this time. On a salary of £138,000, excluding employers' national insurance and employer pension contribution, the new Chief Executive will also be the authority's head of paid service. The salary point has been determined by market testing, the Council says, and is an increase on what the former CEO, John Metcalfe, was earning. The position has been vacant since Mr Metcalfe left at the end of March. He is now Chief Executive of a local authority in Cumbria on a salary of £170,000. The role has been filled on an interim basis in the last 6 months by Wendy Pereira, the Assistant Chief Executive and Director of Strategy. The Council say making a permanent appointment will allow the necessary development and maintenance of strong partnerships and working relationships across all sectors. An extensive recruitment campaign was undertaken in September, thought to have cost more than £11,000, and it featured a campaign video with an appearance from the council leader, Councillor Laura P.C. Wilcox, with the hope it would attract a lot of applicants. With the 21 applications submitted from a diverse range of candidates, the authority says it is now ready to proceed with the first stage of the selection process. The Council's Appointments and Employment Committee are being asked to shortlist the applicants or determine if there are no suitable applications that meet the requirements of the job. The appointment of a Chief Executive cannot be made until Cabinet has been notified of the proposed appointment, and if no objection has been made. The Appointments Committee have been given a confidential appendix for consideration with summaries of all the candidates. The part of the meeting on Wednesday the 12th of October was to decide on a short list or not, and will also be held in private.
This is Brian reading an article from the Island Echo. Former diner could become holiday flat after new tenant not found. A former Sandown restaurant could become a holiday flat after an 18-month hunt failed to find a new business tenant. The Surfside Diner fronts both Sandown Esplanade and the High Street and sits next to the derelict Esplanade Hotel that has been closed since last October. Property owner Michelle Shallis has tried to market the property for more than 18 months, but failed to find a new tenant or owner despite price reductions. They are now asking the Isle of Wight Council for permission to turn the building into a 3-bedroom holiday flat. Andrew White Planning Consultancy, acting on behalf of Ms. Shallis, said 3 operators had tried varied approaches to making the restaurant viable, but without any success. Previous tenants said there was a lack of footfall and the derelict neighbouring properties have had a negative impact. The planning agent said the restaurant now stands empty, having a negative impact on the character of the area. The conversion of the property would bring trade to the town and help support other local businesses like the Reef next door. No changes would be made to the exterior of the property, taking full account of the special character of the conservation area. Floors above the restaurant are already residential and holiday units. You can view the plans, reference 22/01387/FUL on the Council's planning register. Comments can be submitted until the 21st of October. Sandown Town Council supports the plans so long as the property remains in tourism-related use. However, one objection has been submitted saying to grant planning permission would only destroy Sandown more.
This is an article from Island Echo, read by Sue. It won't be long until someone gets hit by a car. Frustration as island roads close Old Undercliff Drive Road. This is a letter to the editor on the 10th of October 2022. I am very concerned that Island Road has closed off the old road at the Knighton end of St Lawrence on the Undercliff. The old road has been used by many walkers every day and sometimes hundreds during the summer. The old road is stable and is a safe walk. The alternative now is to walk on an overgrown and unsafe road due to sharp bends and slopes. Island roads have made the excuse of asbestos on the old road. No proof. And if it is hard asbestos, then so long as you don't disturb it, there is no problem. The old road is stable and is hard. There is asbestos everywhere. Why have island roads created an unnecessary hazard for walkers, and due to the sharp bend it won't be long until someone, or a dog, gets hit by a car, motorbike or a bike. Island roads have not maintained the new road as there is overhanging buddleia. Why also did island roads dig large posts into the old road when there was asbestos? John from the Isle of Wight.
This is Chris reading an article from the Island Echo. Parking charges at St Mary's Hospital bumped up as much as 54%. Parking charges at St Mary's Hospital have gone up by as much as 54% this week. On Monday, the 3rd of October, charges in the car park at the island's only hospital were bumped up for the first time in nearly 5 years. This comes after free parking was instated at the hospital during the COVID-19 pandemic, allowing those visiting and working at the site to park for free for around 2 years. To park for 1 to 2 hours before Monday, it would have cost £1.40. But now, parking for the same amount of time is £2. With parking for 1 hour costing £1.50 alone. All-day parking has also gone up from £6.50 to £7, a rise of 50p. The most staggering increase, though, is for parking for up to 4 hours. Before the price hike, it cost £2.60 to park for up to 4 hours, whereas now it costs a whole £4. 53.8% more. The Isle of Wight NHS Trust has cited a review carried out in 2020 as the reason for the increase in parking fees, amid the need to maintain the security and parking facilities, and insists that the increase is in line with other hospitals in the region. The new parking tariff is as follows. Up to 1 hour, £1.50. 1 to 2 hours, £2. 2 to 3 hours, £3. 3 to 4 hours, £4. 4 to 6 hours, £5. And 6 to 24 hours, £7. A concessionary rate is £1.50. A statement from the Isle of Wight NHS Trust says, the Trust will continue to offer a reduced rate for regular and frequent visitors and people with 2 or more outpatient appointments per week over a period of 4 weeks. Parking is free to visitors of long-term inpatients over 14 days and to disabled drivers, blue badge holders. Our designated drop-off points remain free of charge for up to 30 minutes. The income generated from parking charges is used to provide a security service at St Mary's Hospital and to maintain the car parks across the site. Any additional revenue is invested back into supporting patient care. Whilst it is unknown as to how much the Trust made on parking fees in the last year, back in 2017/18, they made around £420,000 with visitors alone, making up around £320,000 of that figure.
This is Brian reading an article from the Island Echo. The Isle of Wight's most infamous shipwreck, the Clarendon, hit the rocks off Blackgan in 1836. On this day in 1836, the Clarendon, carrying a cargo of rum and molasses from the West Indies, sank off Blackgan with a loss of 10 passengers and 13 crew. In the dim light of the morning of the 11th of October 1836, horrified islanders witnessed a stricken ship battling the elements off the Undercliff, vainly attempting not to hit the rocks. One witness to the dramatic events was former Royal Navy man John Wheeler, who had by that time become a fisherman. When he saw the vessel was likely to come aground at Blackgan, he rushed down the path and reached the foot of the chine shortly before the Clarendon struck the shore. He fortuitously found a coil of rope in a fisherman's hut that had been left unlocked. John tied the rope around his waist, handed the other end to a mate, and rushed into the surf. By this point, the vessel had hit the rocks and was being pounded by the ferocious waves. John implored those on the vessel to jump. 3 did, and he succeeded in dragging 2 of them to safety. He grabbed hold of the 3rd, but both were knocked over by a huge wave. Fortunately, others dragged the 3rd survivor to the shore. No one else was saved. The ship broke up, and the remaining passengers and crew were either drowned or knocked unconscious by the timbers of the wreckage. There then followed pitiful scenes as the drowned and mangled victims of the stricken Clarendon washed ashore. These included the naked bodies of the beautiful Shaw sisters clinging to each other in death. An eyewitness stated, "They were lovely and pleasant in their lives, and in death they were not divided." Tragically, a Lieutenant Shaw was returning from service in the West Indies. He, his wife and 4 daughters all perished. There was one happy tale following the tragedy. A crew member saved by Wheeler, named Thompson, had been his former shipmate on the Falcon. Incredibly, John had saved Thompson from drowning 4 years previously. There was also a horrifically tragic tale. Among those drowned was a Miss Gourlay. She was carried away by the tide to Southsea, where her body came ashore in the garden of her father's, Captain Gourlay R.N., house. Most of the victims were buried in Chale churchyard, where their graves can still be found. The Clarendon was destroyed. Many of her timbers were used to construct houses in the vicinity. The oak beams of the White Mouse Inn, formerly known as the Clarendon, were salvaged from the wreckage. The shock of the loss of the Clarendon had a powerful effect on the powers that be at the time. Efforts were made to prevent further tragedies. The lighthouse at St Catherine's was erected the following year and was first put to use in 1840. Lifeboat stations and a coastguard station were also established at Brook, Atherfield and Bryston.
Hello, this is an article from the Island Echo read by Sue. Costa Coffee to welcome customers back later this month after renovation works. Improvement works at Newport's Costa Coffee are progressing, with confirmation that the store will reopen next weekend. The outlet at St James's Square closed earlier this month to allow for the UK's fastest growing coffee shop chain to improve the look and feel of the store, which was once Millet's. Renovations are being made to both the interior and exterior of the building, which is situated next to the now vacant Top Man store. The work is being carried out by Harvey Shopfitters. Plans are in place for Newport to receive its own drive-through Costa Coffee, as previously reported by Island Echo. Customers are to be invited back in store at St James's Square from next Saturday, the 22nd of October.
Shanklins Brunswick Hotel hit with 1-star food rating from the Isle of Wight radio read by Lee. A popular Shanklin hotel has been slapped with a 1-star food hygiene rating after cross-contamination risks and out-of-date food were found. The Brunswick hotel owners have said in all their time in the hospitality industry they have never received a rating this low, and it was highly frustrating. The issues raised were over machines and not the standard of the kitchen or the quality of the food. Inspectors from the Isle of Wight Council's Environmental Health Department visited the hotel on Queen's Road in September and found major improvement was necessary. Among the issues, inspectors found food items past their use-by date, including 3 packets of salmon, 17 days prior, butternut puree, 7 days, Parma ham, 6 days, containers of beef fillet and Tamora beef, 1 day, and berries, 1 day. There was a risk of physical contamination as chocolate-covered strawberries were left in the fridge uncovered. Inspectors also found the walls, tiles, grout and skirting around the deep-fat fryer were dirty and greasy. In the walk-in chiller, walls were damaged or the plastic cladding was coming apart and the sealant around the sink in the washing-up area was mouldy. The hotel said it has since addressed the age-related issues with the chiller, but it will be refitted when the hotel is shut next month. The main issue the inspector found was the vacuum packing machine, which staff had not been adequately trained to use, but posed a risk of cross-contamination as raw foods were being vacuum packed on the ready-to-eat only machine. At the time, a voluntary stop took place on using a vacuum packing machine to stop the major risk as E. coli may contaminate the surfaces. It and the water bath has since been removed from the kitchen. Owners Jenny and Paul Massey said the score is not a reflection of the hotel's professionalism or standards, and at the time of the inspection the head chef and managers were away on holiday but implemented the improvements when they returned. They said, "We have been in the hospitality for a long time and never received ratings this low. It is highly frustrating that the main issue during the visit was the vacuum packing machine and not the standard of our kitchen or the quality of the food we served, and yet such a low score was given. The chef who was in charge at the time of the inspection is no longer with the hotel," they said, and staff have undergone further food safety training. Inspectors have since been back to check the hotel, and the hotel said the inspectors were happy with the improvements with no issues found. The hotel is currently awaiting a re-inspection. Mr. and Mrs. Massey say the hotel's kitchen had a number of issues when they took it over, and they spent over £50,000 to rectify them.
Right, this is the second part of the Talking News, read by Lynn
and Morris.
And here is this week's Society's News. Swimming is on Monday at Medina Swimming Pool between 1:15 and 2:15. The cost is just £5 and members have full use of the pool.
Our Tuesday yoga sessions at Millbrook House, the cost is £3 and runs between 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. Refreshments served afterwards.
Coffee and chat once again will be on Wednesday starting at 10 o'clock. All are very welcome to come along and speak to members and staff. The cost is £1 for coffee and cake.
Mix and Mingle will resume again this week.
If you fancy a go at horse riding or tandem bike riding, as advertised in the newsletter, please call the office for more details.
Our monthly lunch club will be back in November on the 8th, and more details to follow.
This week, our members, volunteers and friends all thoroughly enjoyed their mini break to Warner's at Norton Grange. The sun shone for the whole of the break, and many activities, including archery, shooting, quizzes, were enjoyed by all.
Now we're going on to news items and sport. I have a headline here that reads Sharp rise in COVID cases at St Mary's. A sharp rise in COVID cases has led to difficulties at St Mary's Hospital, including the current critical incident. Since the end of September, when there were 12 COVID patients being cared for, the number has jumped to more than 40. According to the latest available government data, there were 22 COVID patients in St Mary's on October the 5th, including 2 on ventilators. 7 days previously, there had been 12 COVID patients. However, following an inquiry by the county press, the hospital said they now have more than 40 COVID patients, and they are anticipating a rise in that number. Juliette Pearce, Director of Nursing, Midwifery and Allied Health Professionals, said, "We are seeing a rise in COVID cases on the island. There are currently more than 40 inpatients across our services who have tested positive, and we expect those numbers to continue to rise. Although these numbers are high as a result of the vaccine programme, we are seeing less severe symptoms than at the height of the pandemic. I would urge all islanders to help to keep themselves and those around them as safe as possible by coming forward to have both the COVID booster and flu vaccine as soon as they are eligible. We are in the process of rolling out these vaccinations to our own staff, and with the pressure that the island's healthcare system is under, it's important that we all play our part to protect ourselves and our island population as we head into the winter months. You may be contacted by your GP practice to get vaccinated, or you can choose to book online or call 119 for free. Steve Parker, Medical Director, said earlier this week, "We are seeing a rise in COVID cases on the island, and the number of people in our hospital with COVID is increasing rapidly to levels beyond what we saw during the pandemic."
A Chinook chopper in an Island 999 exercise. The waka waka of a Royal Air Force RAF Chinook helicopter could be heard around Jersey Camp near Newtown on Tuesday. The transport helicopter touched down on a number of occasions as part of a multi-agency training exercise. Coming from the 27 Squadron based at RAF Odiham in Hampshire, it lifted a 3-ton fire pump used by the fire service in major flood situations and carried trained personnel from various emergency service teams. The aircraft completed a number of approaches and load pickups to make sure the island's responding agencies were familiar with the operating procedures of the Chinook helicopter, including helicopter landing site operations. The downdraft from the Chinook was so powerful it set off a nearby car alarm when it landed. The exercise was a resounding success, and among those to step on board was James Potter, station manager at Ventnor Coast Guard Rescue Team. He said, "It was my first time of going on a Chinook. We're used to working with Coast Guard helicopters, so it wasn't our first time in the air, but it was a fantastic training experience. Stepping on the Chinook, it was a lot bigger than what we're used to, very spacious and very loud underneath. But inside, it was actually quite quiet." Justin Hartland, Group Manager for the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service, said the purpose of the exercise was to test the RAF's capability for lifting a high-volume pump. This was into and around unstable terrain, which we can't necessarily access, either on foot or with vehicles, said Mr. Harden. As you can imagine, we may have to pump water quite considerable distances, and to do that, we have to put pumps in series. To do that, with a 3-ton pump, the RAF's capability and ability to undersling those pumps and assist us in setting up that network is really beneficial. Darren Steed, Resilience Manager at the Isle of Wight Council, said, "What we've had today at Jersey Camp is a demonstration of the capabilities of an RAF Chinook helicopter for lifting a fire service piece of kit, or it could be any piece of kit. We've also had some trained passengers from the Coast Guard, the Environment Agency, Fire Service, Isle of Wight Council liaison officers and the Isle of Wight Ambulance Service." See countypress.co.uk for more pictures and a video.
The Health Secretary has approved 10 new community diagnostic centres, CDCs, and one is coming to St Mary's Hospital. Usually based in community settings such as shopping centres and football stadiums, the hubs are designed to reduce COVID backlogs by speeding up diagnosis. The new centres will be rolled out across England, including the Isle of Wight, Burnley in Lancashire and the Medway region in Kent. The centres house a range of equipment including MRI, X-ray and ultrasound scanners and offer services including blood tests and heart rhythm monitoring. Once referred by a GP, pharmacist or hospital, patients can access CDCs in their area and get symptoms checked out. The one-stop shops backed by £2.3 billion in government funding have delivered more than 2 million tests, checks and scans since July 2021. Health and Social Care Secretary Therese Coffey said, "My number one priority is delivering for patients and we're getting on with the job of tackling the issues that affect people most: ambulances, backlogs, care, doctors and dentists."
Tesco has been given the green light. A national supermarket giant has been given permission to move into Newport, amid concerns its presence would fuel antisocial behaviour. On Wednesday last week, the Isle of Wight Council gave Tesco the green light to hold an alcohol and food licence at its new store on Newport High Street. It is now thought the chain's 6th island outlet, which is moving into the former Laura Ashley and H. Samuels store, will open by Easter next year. The application will see the express store sell food and alcohol for consumption off the premises from 6 a.m. to midnight, 7 days a week. The proposals had led to concerns from one objector who did not attend the council hearing, claiming if the application was granted it would fuel public disorder. Speaking at the council's licensing subcommittee hearing, Tesco's licensing manager, Hardish Purewall, said the chain had had no licensing issues raised with island stores in the past. Miss Purewall said that in the Tesco Express store there would only be a small number of alcohol lines, with the premises unbranded as an off-licence and predominantly as a grocery shop with an alcohol offering. Aided by CCTV staff, would be able to refuse to serve alcohol to customers, she said, and run training programmes for staff on age-restricted sales. Miss Purewall thanked the objector for their representation, adding it was good to hear what is going on in the town, but stressed there was no evidence of problems and should the police have had any issues, they would have contacted them. Council officers said there was no evidence to suggest other retail outlets in the town selling alcohol on the same terms have any bearing on incidents of antisocial behaviour. Questions were raised about what would happen when the Isle of Wight Festival took place. The manager of Tesco Express in Wootton told the committee in recent years, with alcohol now able to be pre-ordered at the festival site, its sales had massively dropped. They confirmed they had never done a promotional price on the island, but may bring in more stock due to the increase in demand. The subcommittee agreed to the licence and wished Tesco success with the store.
14 months on from horrendous flooding which affected Binstead, the impact on residents has been laid bare in a new report which suggests ways of preventing it in the future. Residents affected had their mental health impacted, but also suffered from breathing problems, back pain and fatigue after the flooding last July, as they were forced to move possessions and sandbags to protect their homes and carry out intense cleaning afterwards. Some residents' lives have been further disrupted as they have had to move out of their homes and find either permanent or temporary accommodation. On July the 25th, 2021, an extreme rainfall event occurred, according to the Isle of Wight Council's flood investigation report for the town, with a large volume of rain falling in a relatively short period of time. It had a 1 to 2.5% probability of occurring in any given year. Several problems with drainage, including blockages and insufficient capacity, have been identified as causing surface water runoff and pooling. The flooding lasted over 2 hours, with water depths inside properties reaching between 250mm and 600mm and up to 1 metre externally. It affected at least 20 homes and the Fleming Arms pub. The combined sewer system was also a secondary source of flooding, as residents noticed the presence of foul sewage in the water, with the report concluding the system could not cope. Recommendations from the report suggested the installation of rain gardens, a shallow area of ground filled with water-logging plants, along Greenway, and underground storage tanks along the Mall to Sandpath footpath. Further mapping is also suggested of watercourses in the area and the introduction of a property flood resilience scheme. Binstead and Fishbourne representative Councillor Ian Dawes said the report was a long time coming, but things are now moving in the right direction. He said, "This, for the most part, serves as our Bible on how we can improve Binstead in terms of flood mitigation." Councillor Dawes secured funding for mitigation works, some of which, he said, have already started. He is setting up a community drop-in session, hopefully in November.
Now, an article entitled Twins Win, and it's about a Ukrainian pair who have been a hit since a welcome to Newport Youth Football Club. After all the upheaval of fleeing war-torn Ukraine and moving to the foreign surroundings of the island, twin boys Denis and Artem have quickly settled into local life thanks to Newport Youth Football Club. The 8-year-old Yershov brothers, who came to the island from Kiev with mother Tetiana under the government's Homes for Ukraine scheme, have had to adapt to their new way of life and culture living in East Cowes. Football lovers Denis and Artem were going for a walk with their mum at Wootton Rec last summer when they saw the Newport under-9s doing a training session. The team's manager, former Newport Football Club captain Martin McDonough, said, "The lads were training and the two boys strolled over and asked if they could join in. They happened to be in the same age group. I said to come back for the next training session the following week. They came and have been very happy with us ever since. They are a couple of really good lads. Artem is their goalkeeper and Denis a winger. In only their first games playing for the under-9 team, they helped Newport win the Mark Burrows Memorial Tournament. In the final, Artem was the hero, saving a penalty. In a recent Island Sunday Youth Under-9 League game, Denis scored 6 times. The tournament was the first games they had played and they've settled in really well, like they've been there for years," Martin added. The twins attend Queensgate Primary School, and the Homes for Ukraine scheme has helped more than 100,000 refugees settle in the UK since the government introduced it this summer.
Police have confirmed that a man died suddenly in Little London in Newport on Sunday. A spokesman said, "We were called at 1:04 p.m. on Sunday, October the 9th, to Little London in Newport, following the sudden death of a 60-year-old man. The death is not being treated as suspicious, and a file will be prepared for the coroner in due course."
Thousands has been stolen from a cancer charity. A trusted finance boss spent 6 years siphoning thousands of pounds from the cancer charity she worked for into her own accounts, a court has been told. Former Wessex Cancer Trust Financial Coordinator Paula Tribick transferred vital cash as the charity launched public fundraisers in a pitched battle to survive. The Wessex Cancer Trust helps island people affected by cancer as well as in the rest of Wessex, with a centre in Newport that opened in 2020 after a major fundraising push. The charity, which helps people living with cancer and their families, faced possible closure and scrambled to raise £600,000 to save the organisation at the start of December 2019. Bosses said Tribick's crime, spanning from January 2013 to December 2019, left them shocked and saddened. Tribick, 48, admitted fraud by abuse of position at Southampton Magistrates Court. The court heard how she stole money by abusing her position within the struggling charity. Some £290,000 was raised to save it from going under in 2020. She dishonestly transferred money from the bank accounts of Wessex Cancer Trust and its retail subsidiary WCT Wessex Limited to herself over 6 years. She was eventually caught in 2019, with the charity taking immediate action and reporting the incident to the police. In a joint statement, Diane Cutler, Chair of Trustees, and Rachel Bilsbury-Grass, Chief Executive of Wessex Cancer Trust, said, "We are shocked and saddened that a trusted member of staff would steal from our charity. This is an historic incident, and when it was discovered in 2019, we took immediate action to inform the Police and Charity Commission and to review all internal procedures. The individual has now pleaded guilty in the Magistrates' Court, and we look forward to the sentence hearing in October. As a charity, we are grateful for every penny that we receive from our supporters and the hard work of our volunteers. Without their generosity, we would not be able to offer local people living with cancer the emotional and well-being support they need." Tribick of Broadlands Road, Southampton, is due to be sentenced at the City Crown Court on October the 18th.
Writing winner Kenneth declares himself surprised, delighted and stunned. The first ever Isle of Wight Book Awards celebrated island-related fiction, non-fiction and children's books in Cowes this week. Held at Island Sailing Club on Wednesday, the awards were a chance to hear and meet 3 nationally known authors who talked about their books. To be shortlisted, authors can live anywhere, be dead, alive or middling, but the content of the books must be related to the Isle of Wight. Everyone on the shortlist received a certificate, and the winners each got £100, with the overall winner taking home £500. Kenneth Hicks won in both the non-fiction category and was the overall winner for his book An Island Legacy, which provides a record of island towns, villages, land and seascapes, historic buildings and coastal views over 200 years. The county press asked Ken for a few words to describe how he was feeling. He said, "Surprised, delighted and stunned." Ken told the county press what happened after he won the non-fiction award. He said, "As I left the mic, Hunter Davis said to me, 'Don't go, you've won the £500. That really stunned me. I was speechless. I thought the best thing to do was to give it all to the hospice." The fiction category winner was Marion Carmichael with her book Green Grass Stockings, and the winner of the Children's Book Award was Meg L. Hewison for My Friends by the Beach.
A by-election looms as a Tory councillor quits. The former Conservative group leader at the Isle of Wight Council has resigned as a councillor after becoming disillusioned by politics and politicians nationally and locally. Steve Hastings, the now former ward councillor for Bryston, Calbourne and Shalfleet, has said he no longer believes in the Conservative Party. There will now need to be a by-election in his ward on the precariously balanced Isle of Wight Council. In a statement, Mr Hastings said, the last 2 turbulent years in national politics, including Partygate and scandals involving Tory MPs Owen Paterson, Chris Pincher and Imran Ahmed Khan, followed by a lack of governance due to an elongated leadership campaign, and the farce that has engulfed the leadership since has led him to become disillusioned by politics and politicians. He said he thinks if you fly a flag, you must believe in what it stands for, and he can no longer believe in the Conservative flag he was elected under. Mr. Hastings said, "I have no wish to change flags or go against the wishes of the electorate, who wanted a Conservative at the time of the last election. Therefore, I feel I have no alternative but to resign from the Isle of Wight Council." Mr. Hastings has been on the Isle of Wight Council after being elected to the Central Wight Ward in a 2018 by-election, following the resignation of Bob Seeley to become MP. Following the 2021 elections, Mr. Hastings became Tory group leader at County Hall. Although failing to secure the majority of seats needed, the Conservatives lost control of the authority. A period of illness, however, saw Mr. Hastings resign his position as group leader 7 months later to make way for Councillor Joe Robertson. He recovered to continue his role on the council. A by-election, Mr. Hastings said, will give residents the opportunity to decide again who they wish to represent them. Mr. Hastings said it was a privilege and an honour to have represented his residents and thanked them for the opportunity to do so. He said it had been a pleasure to work alongside Conservative group members who consist of a lot of hard-working and committed men and women, and he wished them well for the future. Councillor Robertson has thanked Mr. Hastings for the contribution he made to the council while elected, and particularly in his previous role as Cabinet Member for Heritage, Waste and Environment. He said, "I wish him and his wife well for the future and their new life in Devon."
Southern Water is keeping its hosepipe ban in place as we head into the colder and wetter months, it has confirmed. In a letter to customers, it thanked people for adhering to the temporary use ban restrictions, also known as TUBs or hosepipe bans, introduced on August the 5th. It said, "We fully appreciate the impact these restrictions have had on you, and we want to reassure you of the things we're doing to reduce demand on local rivers and limit water loss on our network. Saving water in your area is making a difference. By following these restrictions, you've helped reduce water usage in the area by around 5% compared to last year, saving roughly 11 million litres of water. Thank you for playing your part and helping reduce pressure on the rivers Test and Itchen." It explained despite the reduction in demand and recent wet weather, the river Test's levels are still low, around 25% down on where they should be. That's because we've had lower than average rainfall for the last 10 months. So we need to keep restrictions in place a bit longer. No date has been given.
A Databoy rings alarm bells. A suspected mine floating in the water off Hurst Castle turned out to be a wave Databoy. Yarmouth's RNLI attended the incident shortly after noon on Sunday, reaching the area within 10 minutes. A spokesman said the object was investigated by the crew and was found to be a wave Databoy. Photos and details were then passed on to Solent Coastguard for a more detailed inspection, who were happy with the crew's assessment of the buoy. With no further action required, the crew was stood down and returned to station. If you ever have any concerns about a person or objects in the water, please do not hesitate to report this by calling 999 and asking for the Coastguard.
A petition by Ventnor residents asking for a series of road safety measures to be introduced on Belgrave Road has been rejected by the Isle of Wight Council. Since a landslide on January the 16th in 2020, the road has been closed to through traffic. Now, 64 residents have signed a petition asking for wider pedestrian pavements, traffic calming measures and a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit before it reopens to through traffic later this year. The council rejected the petition, said a spokesperson for the petitioners. They say that there is no record of any pedestrian injury or deaths from road accidents on Belgrave Road, and therefore they have instructed Island Roads to reopen the road to 30 mph through traffic, without doing anything to reduce the danger to pedestrians using the old narrow pavements. They also say the pavements cannot be widened without compromising accessibility of other highway users. Naturally, we are appalled at the council's neglect of their duty of safeguard to pedestrians. Neither pavement continues along the full length of the street, so pedestrians have to cross the street somewhere, but there is no plan to provide any pedestrian crossing. Ventnor Town Council has also received complaints from users of mobility scooters about the difficulty of using the narrow pavements on Belgrave Road. The residents of Belgrave Road are not convinced the council understands the danger to pedestrians or wants to listen to representations from Ventnor Town Council and local residents to discourage through traffic on Belgrave Road. A spokesperson for the Isle of Wight Council said the decision was taken to progress the changes sought by the petition as following an earlier consultation with residents and the wider community. No consensus could be reached on which measures were preferred, and that would meet highway safety standards and satisfy access requirements.
The farmers' market says farewell. Last month, after 23 years, the island farmers' markets ceased trading due to a lack of stalls. But its chairman said it did what it set out to achieve. Set up to see if local producers could produce products local people wanted to buy, the market could be found at Newport St Thomas's Square on Fridays and Ryde's Anglesey Street on Saturdays. The weekly markets were very busy and enabled island producers to build brands that are now well known. Several farmers' markets members have gone on to own successful farm shops and continue to sell a wide range of local produce. Mary Case, who was chairman of the farmers' market and traded Isle of Wight honey, was the last man standing and was there at the beginning 23 years ago. The last traders, besides Mary, were island bakers who stopped trading with the market after it became financially impractical to continue, and Isle of Fudge. Mary told the county press, "I just didn't fancy winter on my own." In years gone by, Farmer Jack's, Colin Boswell from the Garlic Farm, and Brownrigg's, now Isle of Wight Farm Shop, were just a few of the island names who attended. Mary continued, "If you were good at it one day a week, you may as well do it for 7 days, which is what they did. So now we have got all these wonderful farm shops. People like going to farm shops, especially because they are a destination. There were people who came for 20 years. We've seen them and their children grow up. I'm going to miss all those loyal customers. The markets have done what it set out to achieve, and we shouldn't be too sad." The Island Farmers Markets Committee considered the Royal Isle of Wight Agricultural Society Rural Careers Fund to be the most appropriate recipient of its £3,000 worth of residual funds, helping young islanders to progress careers in the rural sector. Danny Horn, RIWAS chairman, said, "We are grateful to the island farmers' markets for their support. It will allow us to support more young people as they progress their careers in the rural sector. The markets have made a significant contribution to the local food and drink sector."
A group of churches and charities have got together in Newport to create a heat hub which welcomes people to come in for a chat and a cup of tea or coffee during the winter to save on their heating bills. Among those taking part in the scheme is the Salvation Army. Captain Rodney Bean said most of us tend to run some sort of centre or drop-in, but the idea of the heat hub is to make sure there is somewhere open on each day throughout the week. People can drop in for a chat and a hot drink, and quite often there are other things going on in the various halls at that time, so there are always people about. They can stay for as long as they like and can keep warm, especially if they are frightened of putting the heating on at home. We're all working together to make sure people don't go cold this winter. The scheme runs 6 days a week and the times are Monday 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Living Room 82 to 83 High Street. Tuesday 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Salvation Army 72 Pyle Street and 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the Congregational Church 98 Pyle Street. Wednesday, noon till 2 p.m, church on the roundabout at Coppins Bridge. Thursday, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m, the Living Room. Friday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m, the church on the roundabout. And Sunday, all churches are open.
Beatrice's undies sell for thousands. Items of historic importance from an island estate made more than £10,000 at auction last Friday. Broadcaster, expert and sale room owner Charles Hanson led the sale at Hanson's in Oxfordshire. He told bidders it was an honour to handle history and praised the collector from the Isle of Wight who had amassed the items. Bidders in the sale room and across the world, including the United States, battled it out for items that used to belong to Marilyn Rose, 90, who ran an antique shop in Gurnard and Newport. The artefacts were rediscovered during a house move from a property that dates back to the 1700s and was once home to Sir William Carter Hofmeister, Queen Victoria's physician. Antique and Isle of Wight glass, vases, and even a royal doorknob complete with cipher, something that could potentially have hung on a door at Osborne, were also up for grabs. Marilyn could not remember how she ended up with the items, though many are thought to be directly linked to the Osborne estate. Among the items were a 19th century toy box that once belonged to Queen Victoria's daughter, Princess Beatrice, with an inscription that reads, "Toy Music, HRH Princess Beatrice," and an estimate of 400 to 600. The hammer finally fell at 4,400. Lace bearing a note which reads, "Portion of the pall that covered Queen Victoria's coffin on her last journey from Osborne, Isle of Wight, February the 1st, 1901, made £750. Charles Hanson praised its rich royal history. Pale cream cotton bloomers which belonged to Princess Beatrice, also a former governor of the Isle of Wight who lived at Carisbrooke Castle, had never been sold before. Bearing a crown and the initials BB for Beatrice of Battenberg, the garment dates to the years following her 1885 marriage to Henry of Battenberg. Calling it a simply wonderful lot and a privilege to handle, Mr. Hanson brought the hammer down at £900. Queen Victoria's own extra-large pale cream cotton nightdress edged with Honiton lace and embroidered with VR and a crown was estimated at between £1,500 to £2,000. New to the market, it actually made £2,600. Phone bidders from America were among those involved in its sale.
A driver was left shaken after crashing his lorry into a bridge at Sandown yesterday morning, which was Thursday. The incident at the junction of Moreton Common, Avenue Road and Perrone Way happened around 8:30 a.m, causing long traffic jams and the suspension of the Island line between Shanklin and Ryde. The articulated lorry belonging to British Gypsum and towing an XPO logistics trailer was left on 3 wheels and stuck against the bridge following the collision. Police were called and guided traffic around the bridge, with motorists advised to find an alternative route, and bus diversions were put in place. After an inspection by Network Rail, the Island line reopened around 11:10 a.m. The bridge has suffered damaging accidents on previous occasions, with 2 in the last few years.
And now a railway Oscar for a station. Shanklin Railway Station has won a prestigious award at the National Rail Awards, taking home their prize in the small station category. The Grade 2 listed Victorian station on Island Line triumphed over highly commended Buxton Station in Derbyshire, Hatch End Station in London, and other submissions. Judges considered entries against set criteria for operations including safety, infrastructure, and customer-friendly presentation. Particular emphasis was placed on initiative and innovation. Rail magazine organises the Railway Oscars every year to reward excellence and achievement in the industry, and this year's ceremony took place on Monday at the Grosvenor House Hotel in London, co-hosted by BBC presenter Hugh Edwards. Island Line between Ryde Pierhead and Shanklin reopened in November 2021, following a £26 million transformation on the line's trains, stations and infrastructure, which included the launch of the new Class 484 fleet. Claire Mann, Managing Director of South Western Railway, said, "I'm absolutely thrilled that Shanklin Station on the Island Line has won the prestigious Station of the Year award. We're always striving to improve our customer experience, and it's great to get national recognition for our team's hard work. Thank you to all those who worked so hard to achieve this success."
Autumnal gold for organisers. The switch from March to October for the Isle of Wight Grand National and Ashy Scurry, the biggest event on the island's equestrian calendar, is proving to be quite a hit. Staged at West Ashy Farm in glorious autumnal weather, the traditional series of races certainly drew a crowd, as entry numbers soared to levels not seen for several years. Among them was a celebrity from the world of horse racing, Charlie Fenwick, the jockey who won the 1980 Grand National, riding Ben Nevis. Charlie flew over from the United States to watch his granddaughter compete in the Elite Spas Puffing Billy Stakes for children on small ponies on Sunday, an event that certainly gave him a lot of personal satisfaction, judging by his reaction. A new addition to the event is Shetland pony racing, which has proved to be a great success, especially with the kids. The Isle of Wight Shetland Champion Hurdle was won by Grace Miller, who rode Mercier Calvados. The young jockeys were aged between 8 and 13 years, must be no taller than 5 feet, with all ponies registered to be no taller than 42 inches. In the much anticipated Ashy Scurry, Dawn Graham won it riding Twiglet. A new record for entries into the big race of the day, the Isle of Wight Grand National, which saw 12 horses battle it out for the Black Gang Chine Cup. This year it was won by Zach Davidson riding Creve Hill. Event co-organiser Karen Begley said, "The move of the event from March to October has definitely worked, and the weather was fantastic. The rain we had leading up to it never put it at risk of being run, which was happening in March on waterlogged ground. Harold George, Matt Legg and their team of helpers produced an excellent track. It was a successful day with some very exciting racing," added Karen. There were over 80 horses running in the various races. All the races had an exciting finish, with riders having to keep the pressure on as they approached the finish line. Island riders held their own against some fast mainland horses and ponies. The Hampshire and Isle of Wight Air Ambulance will receive most of the proceeds from the event, with the balance to be split between other causes yet to be decided by the events committee.
And now we're going on to Wight memories and some nostalgia, and we're going to read about an insight into the world of rope making, banisters of cows. Bannister's Rope Works of Cowes was world famous in its heyday and was the place to go for ropes of all shapes and sizes. Henry Bannister started making rope around 1790, moved to a site on Mill Hill Road in 1820, and then built a rope walk over 1,000 feet long, extending from the Mill Hill Road frontage to halfway along Pelham Road. An 1894 trade catalogue said of Bannister's, "A large plant of machinery has been laid down, making it the largest industrial concern of the kind on the island." As rope manufacturers, the firm hold the leading position, and their ropes are sent to all parts of the world. When it comes to this class of work, there are few firms that can approach Messrs Bannister. The plant of rope-making machinery is very extensive and embraces the most improved apparatus driven by steam power. The tarring shop and other departments combine to make this ropery one of the best in the kingdom. Vast stocks of raw material are held in the shape of bales of hemp and flax from all the chief sources of supply. They have also a wharf and stores at Solent Wharf, Medina Road, West Cowes, and a patent slip where small boats and launches may be laid up. Altogether, about 50 hands are regularly employed in this flourishing business. For some of those 50 hands, Bannister's was a dangerous place to work from time to time. Industrial accidents were common in Victorian times. Safety at work was non-existent. Guards on machines were unheard of, and so was compensation. On December the 14th, 1889, the county press reported, on Tuesday morning a youth named George Jackson was at work in Mr Bannister's rope works, and in clearing a rope from one of the machines, the middle finger of his left hand became entangled and was badly crushed. He was taken at once to Dr Hofmeister, when it was found necessary to amputate the finger. The operation was skilfully performed by Dr Hofmeister, the lad bravely submitting without the administration of chloroform.
A year later, unguarded machinery claimed another victim under the headline "Alarming Accident at Bannister's Rope Works." The CP of October the 4th, 1890, reported, "On Wednesday morning, an accident of a serious character occurred at Mr Bannister's Rope Works to a boy named Hurst, 14 years of age. It appears that the boy was going to put some seed beans on a beam in the roof, and to help him to reach the place, which is about 9 feet from the ground, he jumped up and caught hold of a shaft over his head. The shaft was revolving with great rapidity, and the poor boy was drawn up, and his clothes becoming entangled with the shaft, he was whirled around several times, beating him against the surrounding woodwork. His cries brought speedy help, and a man named Muncher, with great presence of mind, ran and stopped the machinery, and the unfortunate boy was taken down, fearfully cut, with one leg broken, and his clothes torn from him. Dr Knockholds attended him, and had him removed to his surgery on a stretcher. On examination, it was found that one leg was fearfully broken, and it was necessary to amputate the limb below the knee, and this was done at once, the patient being put under by chloroform. The head was very much cut about, and he had lost a good deal of blood, and as soon as possible he was taken to his home, where he now lies. There appears to be no blame attached to anyone. For the next 60 years all seems to have been well, with no further accidents turning up in the CP. Bannister's flourished until the 1950s, when nylon and polyester arrived and revolutionised the rope-making industry. The new ropes were cheaper and stronger than normal natural ropes, and the writing was on the wall. The demand for natural ropes plummeted, and a slimmed-down Bannister's was sold to J.S. Wights in 1956, who moved production to their yards. Ironically, Wights only had a few more years before they too would close. The shipyard closed in 1965, and what was left was taken over in 1981 by Elliott Turbo Machinery of Pennsylvania, makers of petrochemical rigs. By that time, Bannister's site had been sold in 1968 to Wadham College, Oxford, owners of much of Cowes High Street to this day. Flexing their muscles, the college made no bones. They had bought the land as investment, and in 1973 they submitted plans to build a shopping centre of about 10 shops. A Wadham College spokesman said that if planning permission was disallowed, they would feel obliged to exercise their rights of development for light industry over the whole site. Naturally, that was music to the council's ears. Planning permission was refused, and today the site is home to a small, thriving business park. Just before we go, if any reader knows why a boy would be placing seed beans on a beam, do tell.
And now the view of Matthew Chatfield, the experience of EU roaming. This summer I took my first trip outside the UK since Brexit got done. I took a relaxing beach-based holiday in delightful Croatia, coincidentally the newest member of the European Union. I'd never been to this part of the world before, but as a former Sandown boy I identified with what was going on. Beaches, ice cream parlours, coach parties and beachside restaurants. It's a holiday destination I can recommend. So how did a visit to Europe feel as an outsider? Longer queues at the airport we've all heard about, but what's life like for nations still labouring under the yoke of the EU? I have to say that these Croatians have got it sorted. Firstly, the beaches. Croatia has the best bathing water quality in the whole of the EU. I tried it and can confirm. The beach facilities were second to none and mostly free. It seemed as though this former socialist republic had yet to abandon the idea of providing public services. If austerity was a thing in Croatia, they kept it well hidden. Next, I assumed that the country would be suffering the ignominy of stifling red tape, the sort that we in the UK are constantly told that we must now shake off. But everything I saw suggested otherwise. Our comfortable apartment had no fire escape or fire alarm, and an arrangement for cooking with bottled propane that had me wondering if we might be safer dining out. Roadworks in Croatia are delightfully informal, and if anybody was wearing protective clothing, I didn't see it. Some of the farm vehicles I saw piloted by wizened oldsters on the roads looked like they dated from the war before last, and the delicious artisan produce at the numerous market stalls we passed was most certainly not all being kept at constant temperature. So presumably this nation, with less than half the population of Greater London, was a bit of a backwater. Not at all. We saw new roads and cars almost everywhere we went, and even visited one of the many huge, well-stocked supermarkets on the way. Of course, it wasn't all idyllic. It was hard not to consider the murderous war that birthed this country just a few decades back, even if on the ground there was little sign of it. Some of the new retail developments look profoundly out of place in the Mediterranean countryside, and the new highways are vast and mostly empty. This suggests an enthusiasm for commercial regeneration that could lead the Croatians down the road we unwisely took, towards empty high streets and endless out-of-town developments. But somehow, deprived of their sovereignty, Croatia is doing fine. A range of problems, we are told, are the fault of the EU seem to have been solved. Isn't this what we voted to be rid of all those years ago? At a beach greengrocer, yes, really, I bought a cucumber, just to be sure. It was bent.
And now we go on to public information. As readers of the Isle of Wight Observer will be aware, the aim to take forward a new island planning strategy has been derailed, and we now find ourselves in limbo while we await those who failed to support it to come up with alternative recommendations that can be considered by the Cabinet. I am concerned that much of the opposition seems to have been based on misinformation and misunderstanding about the statistical basis upon which the plan can be constructed. Hopefully, the enforced hiatus will give time to correct this and resolve matters. The delay is particularly unfortunate as it holds up other vital work to protect our island, like the creation of a new waste and mineral strategy, which is of utter importance if we find ourselves once again facing the possibility of fracking as being promoted by the Westminster government. On a positive front, I recently attended the first meeting of a new National Islands Forum, which was held in Orkney. It takes a lot to shift me off the island, and a 15-hour journey in what felt like a balsa wood plane was not one I was looking forward to or particularly enjoyed. However, it turned out to be very worthwhile. Many of the issues we face here on the islands exist on almost all of the other islands in the UK. it is plain there is a strong body of experience and ideas, as well as the potential for unified lobbying of Westminster about those issues. We all need to unite to have a stronger voice. I was able to spend time with several government ministers and in particular to discuss issues concerning our energy infrastructure with representatives from Ofgem. We have already agreed in principle on a number of further meetings to discuss these issues. It is important we address these points as they will help us develop our local renewable energy base and, as such, our resilience against the uncertainties we face in relation to energy in the future. We need to make the island as self-sustaining as we possibly can. Surely the pandemic taught us that. And that was written by Laura P.C. Wilcox, who is the leader of the Isle of Wight Council.
And now, what's on the island this week? There's some digital workshops and conversation being held by Isle of Wight Age UK. Age UK, Isle of Wight's digital support workshops are held across the island in small groups and are gently paced. Anyone over 50 can book a place and refreshments are provided. If you don't have your own device, we have tablets and smartphones to borrow too. Come along for some IT help and tell us about any issues affecting older people in the wider community. Let's have a conversation. For information and to book your place, call Age UK Isle of Wight on 01983 301 693. And the next workshop is on Tuesday, the 18th of October at Cowes Library from 10 o'clock till 12:15.
And here we have some local events. On Monday the 17th of October, Keith Donnelly tells canny, uncanny, short, tall tales at 7:30. The cost is £6. And Keith Donnelly tells canny, uncanny, short, tall tales at the Ventnor Arts Club, which is at 13 High Street. And you can email Sue Bailey storyteller@hotmail.co.uk or call 07837 601 315. On Wednesday the 19th of October, Trinity Theatre in Cowes will host Wife After Death at 7:30. The cost of that is £9 and the show runs until the 22nd of October. Wife After Death is a black comedy by Eric Chappell and is presented by Cowes Amateur Operatic and Dramatic Society, and it's on at the Trinity Theatre. On Friday the 21st of October, Joe Plum is performing Born to be the Weather Wizard at 8 p.m. and the cost for that is £12. Joe Plum's hilarious new stand-up show Born to be the Weather Wizard is coming to Ryde this autumn. Department 29 to 30 Cross Street, and you can email joeplum.theatre@gmail.com. On Saturday the 22nd of October, Leo Sayer will be performing at 7:30 at the Shanklins Theatre. On Thursday the 27th of October, we have a venue night at 7:30 at Strings Bar and Venue in Bowling Green Lane in Newport. There's also a Museum of Ryde monthly quiz night at 7:30, and this is a relaxed evening of general knowledge quiz questions, and the cost is £10. There is a raffle, and Yelf's bar service is at £4 per person. Make up your own teams at Yelf's Hotel in Union Street, and you can email Bob Cooper 1948@yahoo.co.uk. The Island Savoyards present Guys and Dolls, and this is on at the Shanklin Theatre and runs from the 27th of October until the 30th of October. The show is at 7:30 p.m. with a matinee on the Sunday. The Island Savoyards present the Broadway classic Guys and Dolls at the Shanklin Theatre. On Friday the 28th of October, we have Sinister Stories at 7 p.m. with a cost of £5.50, and this is an evening of chilling tales in the woods. Fort Victoria Country Park, Fort Victoria, West Hill Lane, Freshwater. And you can email sue@tales.org.uk or call 07837 601315. Nosferatu with a live score is on at 8 p.m. at the Key Arts Centre in C Street in Newport. On Saturday the 29th of October, Rocking the Joint, Isle of Wight R&R at 9 p.m. at the Riverside Centre in the Quay, Newport. Tuesday the 1st of November, Catchin Finch, The Story So Far at Harp on Wight Festival 2022. And it actually says that this is on at 7:15 a.m. Not sure about that, but it's at the Ryde Methodist Church, 14 Garfield Road, Ryde. On the Friday the 4th of November, First Friday Figgy Gig at 7 p.m. The First Friday Figgy Gig, an evening of entertainment, Community Hall at Yarmouth and District, St James's Street, and you can email jean28owen@gmail.com or call 07715 985 689. Also on the 4th of November, Faulty Towers Revisited at 7 p.m. The cost is £35. The Faulty Towers gang are back with a new hilarious show. Can Basil cope with social media, reality television and an invasion of tribute acts? Ryde Castle Hotel Esplanade, and you can get further information from info@comedy-dining.co.uk. Lizzie Hardingham is performing at 7:30 at Ventnor Arts Club, and Keg is performing at 7:30 at the Strings Bar and Venue in Newport. On Saturday the 5th of November, Foo Fighters at Fairley Fireworks at 5:30, North Fairley Farm, 301 Fairley Road, Newport. Sunday the 6th of November, the Cavern Beatles at 7:30 at Shanklin Theatre. Wednesday the 9th of November, Ed Gamble, Electric at 7:30 at the Shanklin Theatre. Thursday the 10th of November, Granny's Attic at Key Arts in Newport at 7:30. Friday the 11th of November, Tina Live, a tribute show to Tina Turner at the Shanklin Theatre at 7:30. On the 12th of November, we have a Cloud Busting, the music of Kate Bush at 7:30, which is also performed at the Shanklin Theatre.
And now we've got a few letters. First one from Nick Stewart, the parish councillor for Bryston, Calbourne, Newtown and Porchfield. And he says, sorry to see Steve go, but we must move on. The resignation of Steve Hastings is unexpected news and a disappointment to lose someone who tried to keep the humanity in politics. As parish councillors, we worked well together and as political opponents respected each other. His resignation from the Conservatives was a real shock and shows how inept they are in government and on the island. Unfortunately, they have moved further away from caring about us towards self-serving ideology. Having come a strong second in the last two local elections, the Liberal Democrats are the obvious choice in the by-election for a more positive approach on the Isle of Wight Council. From conservation to job creation and community support, we see the strengths of island communities and the opportunities to manage the major problems around the economy, environment and cost of living.
Darren Richards from East Cowes writes, Whitelink makes it impossible to commute easily. I moved back to the island 7 years ago to care for elderly relatives. I commute daily to the mainland and have always used Whitelink as a foot passenger due to the ever-increasing costs of the car ferry, meaning it was not a feasible option. In the last 2 years, I have seen the season ticket rise to £1,900 and parking at Wright Pierhead rise to £1,196 for a season ticket holder parking, which makes it £3,036 just to travel the several miles to the mainland. In those 2 years, the services have halved and there's no late service despite massive calls for it. Whitelink refuse, still using the excuse of COVID and dropped passenger numbers. I travel most days and the service is back to pre-COVID numbers. Whitelink, of course, has made massive profits by only running half the services despite charging full price season tickets with no refund or discount. Now Whitelink has almost halved the parking at Ryde Pier Head after dumping containers and blocking off bays, and there are contractors parking everywhere and even taking up disabled bays. Now, with limited parking, people have to then drive back into Ryde and pay for parking yet again, despite already paying for season ticket parking. This then means that you may miss your boat and have a 2-hour wait due to the massively reduced rate of sailings. Our MP, Bob Seeley, has been emailed dozens and dozens of times and done absolutely nothing about the abysmal situation. It is getting to a point where they are making it so absolutely impossible to commute such a short distance that people, like many, have no choice but to leave the island. And people wonder why businesses are going under on the island at an alarming rate. Well, it lies with the ferry company, which can do whatever it wants without any help from government and its MPs.
And now a letter from Hans Bromwich from Cowes. Patient transport should be more accessible. Many elderly islanders live on their own with no family support close by. So what happens if they require a hospital stay on the mainland? With all the pressures on our NHS, hospitals understandably are anxious to discharge patients ASAP and believe many recover better at home. Discharges typically happen late afternoon when you find yourself kicked out of the hospital door with a bag full of meds you've usually been waiting all day for. Hopefully it's not raining. You then have to navigate your way from an unfamiliar hospital location on the outskirts of the city to an Isle of Wight ferry terminal. Hopefully the ferries are running. When you arrive back on the island, there's the joys of a cold, windy bus station and hopefully a bus service that will transport you somewhere close to where you live on the island. Remember, not every elderly patient on the island can afford an Isle of Wight taxi. Think about the arduous journey many elderly island patients have to endure when they are probably not feeling 100%. Not ones to complain, the inhumanity is nevertheless palpable. There is, of course, something called patient transport, a free door-to-door service from hospital to home. But you need to know about it. It has to be pre-arranged through your GP. And like most things, it is becoming increasingly difficult to obtain. Surely the default position should be patient transport for all islanders receiving hospital care on the mainland, unless they specifically say they do not require it. As we move towards a new NHS model where more and more patients will be treated on the mainland, it is important island patients are not left out in the cold, and are instead treated with true compassion and care.
And that brings us to the end of today's Talking News. So it's goodbye from me, Morris.
And goodbye from me, Lynn.
The In Touch programme follows. Domestic abuse. 3 visually impaired people tell us about their experiences of domestic abuse. The cases involved the perpetrator using their visual impairments against them, though gaslighting, coercive control and in one case extreme violence being the cause of their visual impairment. These stories come in the light of a report called The Unseen by the Vision Foundation and Safe Lives. Olivia Curnow, the Vision Foundation's chief executive, gives summary of the report's harrowing findings. If you are at risk of domestic abuse, contact the National Domestic Abuse Helpline on 0808 2000 247. If you are in immediate danger, call 999 and ask for the police. The presenter is Peter White.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
I didn't realise at first that it was domestic abuse. I just thought, this is life, if you like.
When you can't see, you can't really know what is going on fully. So it's a lot more scarier, and the person who's doing that knows that.
Obviously I know who it was, but like other people would say, well, you don't know for sure. How can you know? Because you can't see them.
It's like, go and make me a cup of coffee in the green mug, and you make a cup of coffee in the red mug. So then the red mug comes flying across the room at you. You're useless. You can't even make a cup of coffee.
Most people would say horrible words, but he was saying subtler stuff. Like, Who is going to go out with you? You can't even see, you blind bitch.
These are the words of visually impaired people describing and reliving their experiences of domestic abuse. They've been talking to researchers who've produced The Unseen, thought to be the first report to concentrate specifically on the direct experience of blind and partially sighted people. It was published yesterday by the Vision Foundation, working alongside Safe Lives, an organisation which has been highlighting the shocking scale of domestic abuse in the UK. The report's authors believe that 1 in 12 blind and partially sighted people could have been the victims of domestic abuse. In this programme, we've been talking to 3 people whose experiences illustrate the findings of this report.
I ended up in the marriage at 16 years old, and it was a forced marriage. It sort of happened very quickly. I was at sixth form, came home, found out that my wedding clothes were bought. Nobody asked me any questions. I was on a flight and I ended up married 11 days later.
And the marriage took place, at the wish of your family, with the support of your family?
Correct.
Now, that clearly was something that you hadn't wanted to happen. When did you realise, though, that it was perhaps worse than you'd imagined?
Well, when I did get married to him, things were actually pretty good. The first year, I would say, I was actually head over heels in love with him. Of course, I was a teenager. When I was 7 months pregnant, that's the first time I realised, okay, this is not what I thought it was. That I wanted to start buying pushchair and cots, and there was no money in the saving safe that we had been saving money in. And when I questioned him about it, it was the first time that he thought I was being disobedient and actually slapped me across the face. I realised, okay, I'm in a compromising position.
Can we just explain about your visual impairment and how that started? What was the actual situation with your visual impairment?
When my child was about 2 years old, he wouldn't let me leave the house to attend a hospital appointment with my mum. He was tripping me up, and on that day I sort of had enough and I pushed him away, and he became extremely violent. I was repeatedly kicked in the head. It was to the point where one of my eyeballs had actually come out, and to stop me from calling an ambulance, he had taken my phone and he gave me medical care himself. So we both put my eye back in the socket. I just remember being numb, not knowing what to do. And I started experiencing blurred vision, and I kept telling him, something's not right. I need to get to a hospital. I'm losing vision in my left eye. It's all a blur. And he said, when the swelling goes down, it'll get better. You'll be fine. And we carried on like that for another 7 months, to which I had lost about 80% of the vision in my left eye by then.
How did this develop? I mean, what you've explained seems a terrible thing to happen, but this then went on for a long time, didn't it?
It did. The first time I'd ever gotten to a hospital, I sort of walked into an A&E and I didn't tell them the truth. I sort of said to them, I'm having issues with my left eye. And they kept asking me if there had been any trauma to the eye because it looked like something had happened. And I kept saying, no, nothing had happened. They said to me, you have got retinal detachment. Another few months later, where my only child at the time was making a T-shirt, and she wanted to draw her mummy, but she was too young. So she wanted the teacher to draw mummy, which they drew a woman, and she sort of was drawing blood on one of my eyes, and they asked her about it. And she said, well, my mummy's eye got hurt because my daddy hit her, and that's how it escalated. And he got arrested that day, and I was taken into safety for that day. My family then supported my child, and they painted a picture that they didn't know, which was not true.
Did you think of any organisations designed to help visually impaired people, blind or partially sighted people?
At the time, I actually didn't know anything about anything to do with visually impaired or blind. I wasn't even registered. I had no access to any of that information. I can't explain. I was so unready to get help. I still didn't feel comfortable or safe enough because I was scared of losing my children. I thought as a disabled woman, I wasn't going to be able to keep my children.
Because in spite of what you've explained to us, you went on, you had more children with him, and you carried on with him for how many years?
A total of 15 years. But every time I had tried to escape or did escape, things had happened that I had to come back. I was left with no choice. So there was instances where when I was separated from him, there was a threat to my life. And that threat was not just from his family, also my own family. It was very real that I had to play along, or at some point I wouldn't be around. And I was just really scared that I would leave my child in the same situation. It was made obvious to me that I couldn't move on as a single parent with this impairment that I now have, that nobody would accept me. I fell into that trap and I believed it.
My wife would read out letters to me and then deliberately withhold the vital information. One example of this is a utility service who'd written to me saying, you haven't paid such and such, you need to sort this out within a week, otherwise we will be taking steps, etc. And she would read it by saying, and we can be contacted on phone number. And I would say, what is the phone number? And she'd say, after all I've done for you, you're going to have to wait for 3 days for it.
Why do you think she would do a thing like that?
Power, I think, to a certain extent. It was a kind of coercive control that relied on her feeling the need to be needed and therefore to keep me dependent on purpose. She would deliberately hide medication in obscure places. And so if I had a headache, I had to ask her for headache tablets. And it was only after she'd gone that I discovered that there were Braille on the boxes, because she hadn't even told me that. And sometimes there was gaslighting. You know, we would have an argument, and at 9:30 she would say, I am your carer. At 9:45 she would say, I never said I was your carer. One of the classic examples, she would blame me for pains in her forearm because she didn't want to be guided by the elbow in the usual way. And at one time, she just suddenly decided she wasn't going to guide me anymore if I was going to insist on doing it the way that I'd been trained to. She wanted me to hold on to her in a completely inappropriate way. And so she broke away from me and left me in the middle of lanes of traffic on a slip road from a service station to a motorway.
How long did this go on for?
We were married for 10 years in the end.
10 years, though, is a long time.
10 years is a long time. I did at one time report to the police, and the guy that I spoke to on reception was good, but the people that they sent to speak to me, they were thinking in terms of, if you're a man, the balanced probability is that you are going to be the perpetrator. But they never actually thought somebody is actually starting to taken to throwing objects at you in temper. If you're sighted, you can duck. If you're blind, the first thing you're going to know about it is wallop.
What was your fear as time went on and this all continued?
One of the things that she used to do was to say things like, you think your friends like you, but you can't see what you look like. You can't look into a mirror, so I have to tell you that your friends think you're ugly. And there was a lot of, you would be too much hard work for anybody else. Nobody would want you. And then eventually things got so bad that I thought I'd rather be on my own than having nobody else in my life but her and all of my friends driven away. More in sorrow than in anger, I said, you're going to have to go. Otherwise, heaven knows where this is going to lead.
When did you realise that you had got a problem with your partner?
Well, I'll put it like this, the first day of honeymoon, to be honest with you. He actually made me cry on the first day of the honeymoon. And it was decisions on what we were going to do, and the way he spoke to me and the way he sort of decided what was going to happen. It just made me burst into tears, and I thought, oh my God, what have I got myself into?
Had any of this emerged in your relationship leading up to getting married?
The odd thing, he would like fly off the handle quite quickly. I thought that was perhaps just he'd had a hard day at work, you know, and and he was very quick to temper, but I just thought that was life, you know. It was only as time progressed, it came into the fore that he sort of wanted to control everything I did, wanted to know where I was, what I was doing. I had to keep in touch with him, let him know. When I went to work, he used to ask about the gentlemen that were at work and did they come over and talk to me and things like that. And it was like, well, I'm an independent woman. I can look after myself. Just because I'm blind doesn't mean I'm going to be taken advantage of, or you need to keep control of who I talk to.
In terms of the kind of things he did, what made that particularly distressing to you from the point of view of your lack of sight?
Well, I must admit, he would never, ever touch me physically. That's what I'm thankful of. But he made it perfectly clear that he was capable of doing it. He would throw cups or plates at walls and smash them that I would feel go past the side of my head. And by him doing that and him sort of almost near missing me thinking, oh my God, I better do what he says to keep quiet, you know, tread on eggshells every day. I mean, he would get up in my face, right up in my face and shout at me. And it got to the point where I was afraid to go out because then I thought, he's only going to take it out on the kids.
You said it happened, you know, on the very first day. It upset you.
Yeah.
Did it develop? I mean, did it get worse or was it just a steady kind of?
I would say it was gradual because in the first instance, I could see the size of a saucer. And to me, the size of a saucer is quite big, being a field of vision. But it got to the point of being the size of a 5p piece. And then it totally disappeared within that 5p piece. So as time went on, as my sight got worse, he realised that I became more vulnerable at that point. When it came to the point that I started to answer back and actually put up a fight against him with words, obviously, then yes, that did not help things. It kind of made things worse.
Did you talk to anybody about this? Did you seek help?
Not with any kind of organisation, no. To be honest with you, I didn't know that there were organisations that specifically for visually impaired people. I talked to, obviously, my very, very closest friend. But back when it was happening to me, coercive control wasn't a thing. To me, domestic abuse or things that happened in the house were violence, people getting hit. Well, I wasn't getting hit, he wasn't touching me. So I thought, well, this is just how it is.
Did you ever think about just walking out?
That was another thing that stopped me, see, because of my sight. I didn't think I could cope. My safety is my home, knowing where I am. And to move out and be somewhere else, not being able to find my way around, that would really scare me. He knew that I liked the security of somewhere where I knew where I was.
Well, I've been talking about these issues to Olivia Curnow. She's Chief Executive of the Vision Foundation, which commissioned Safe Lives to research the unseen, this report on domestic abuse.
We were really concerned before we started the research, but I think we've been frankly shocked by the scale, the seriousness of the situation, and also how hard it is for victims to leave. The scale is massive, Peter. We're talking around 1 in 12 visually impaired people, which equates to 188,000 people across the UK who are currently or have previously experienced domestic abuse. The nature of the abuse is really harrowing. It's specific, and abusers use the individual, the victim's sight loss as part of their kind of arsenal of abuse.
Why do you think people seem to have found it so difficult to get help in a situation like this, both from organisations, you know, designed to help visually impaired people and even from their own relatives?
I think that we now know, because we did a survey of over 70 professionals working in this space, that services are not accessible. And too often what victims found is they also weren't confidential. So frequently victims would describe how they were at a medical appointment or in a situation in which they might have been able to disclose, but the abuser was sitting next to them and at no point asked to leave the room, because there's an acceptance, it seems, that if your carer is there, it's still confidential. So people didn't get opportunities to disclose. We also heard from people that when they disclosed to friends and family, in some instances, their disclosures were kind of disregarded with throwaway remarks like, you can't do any better, or what do you expect, or you should be grateful that he or she takes care of you as you're a blind person.
People will be shocked by a lot of this report, but what should happen as a result of your report? What actually needs to be done?
The Vision Foundation will be investing in this area, and we really welcome others who want to invest to support the sector to respond. We'd like to see a really seismic shift in how services approach individuals. We know there are multiple touch points with healthcare professionals and other practitioners that visually impaired people have. It is essential that they can have those meetings in private, and it's essential that these conversations are opened up. You know, if you are at risk of domestic abuse, contact the National Domestic Abuse Helpline on 0808 2000 247. I would like to say, you know, what we also learned from the research is that 90% of relationships are safe and positive and happy. It is perfectly possible for a visually impaired person to have a wonderful relationship with a sighted person. This is the minority, but we are talking about around 9% of people having experienced this. So we have to provide those opportunities for them to disclose.
That really plays to the last question I wanted to ask. The problem with a report like this is that it frames visually impaired people always as the victim. And the truth is surely that people are people, and that visually impaired people can be manipulative and abusive as well. There is grounds for misunderstanding with somebody who just reads this report, isn't there?
I think that's a really important point to make. We did hear about visually impaired perpetrators, but we also heard about the extraordinary power and bravery of people who had chosen to leave abusive relationships. We definitely don't want to reframe visually impaired people as de facto victims in any way. I'd actually like to use the words of one of our interview participants. This individual said that he wanted to highlight how strong people are, how worthy they are of help, and that their disability doesn't make them powerless or voiceless.
I'm definitely much more confident. I found my voice, and this was definitely through the sight loss world that I was introduced to. And I met these people that were blind and had different disabilities that were so independent. I never knew that there was actually a world out there where people lived like that. I'm not afraid to speak out. I feel like nobody could convince me otherwise, that I am happy as a single parent of 4 children with my disabilities, that I can take care of them and myself.
I eventually managed to divorce him and keep the house that I'm in, which, as I mentioned before, was my safety net. I'm now with a guy who treats me absolutely amazing, and I know how I should have been treated all that time. I can walk in through the front door and not dread what's going to happen when I shut it.